All right. My name is Ryan. I'm an engineer here at Integral. Yeah, so let's talk about this. This is going to be about Deno, and it is a secure runtime for JavaScript and TypeScript. Something very similar to Node.js. So if you're familiar with that, then you will have lots of opinions, hopefully positive ones. Yeah, so let's talk about. So what we're going to talk about today is what is Deno and why should I care about it? What makes it so cool? Will this replace Node.js and should I start using this right away? And we'll have some question time too. So let's get started. What is it and why should I care? So I'll start off with this. It's a secure runtime with JavaScript and TypeScript. So you can see right there of like running an app in Deno kind of looks something like this. Deno run app.ts. If you're familiar with Node.js or NPM or any of those kind of front-end languages, you would be like, okay, yeah, that's pretty familiar to me. Like I can understand that. Other things about it is Deno was created by the same person who initially created Node.js. This gentleman right here, he has a talk on YouTube, actually, 10 things that I regret about Node.js. It's actually really entertaining about how he talks about his work. And he's like, yeah, I should have paid more attention to that. So very interesting, definitely something to check out if you're interested at kind of what it takes to create a, where those ideas come from and kind of diving in deeper in with Deno. Like I said, it supports TypeScript right out of the box. So if you're using TypeScript, then you're already supported. You don't need to deal with Webpack or precompilers. You're all set. If you have a more advanced setup, if you're doing some kind of complex, crazy stuff, you might need a tsconfig just to configure how you are compiling your TypeScript. But other than that, you should be all set. Yeah, so a big thing that that Ryan did not like, one of his regrets about Node.js was the lack of security wrapped around Node.js. There really isn't any boundaries, a package, or anything when you're downloading a third-party module or kind of grabbing a linter or something like that. It really has free roam over your server, your system, or your host computer. So something that he wanted to address was baking in security right at the forefront of the foundation of Deno. And we can talk more about that shortly here. So kind of diving into a little bit more deeper topics on what makes it so cool. We'll dive in here. These are some other reasons of learning more, kind of leaning more into it. Deno improves on Node.js with addressing security concerns. Okay, that was strange. Then we also have remote file execution. So this is pretty neat, and we can talk more about that. And then standard library and modules. And then there is no package.json or node modules. So kind of diving each into those topics. So what does it mean to have kind of like a secure runtime environment? What I mean by this is that you need to tell Deno essentially the permissions that each app are allowed to use. For instance, the one example that we have right here is that allow net, that is kind of a permission flag right there, that will allow the app.ts file right there to reach out to your network and or the internet. If you did not have that, it would kind of give you, oh, I can't do that, I don't have access. And I do have an example of showing you what that kind of looks like. There's other permissions with tapping into the file system. So maybe you might be downloading an application and you're like, oh, cool, kind of going on. And then all of a sudden it kind of presents you and says, oh, hey, I need access to this temporary file. You might be like, well, why are you doing that, right? It can give you that added security of knowing what they're tapping into on your host machine or your server so you can kind of sleep better at night. Security is becoming an everyday part of conversation within developers and even within the home. So this is just a language kind of taking steps to really baking it in. You can even see more based on permissions This is the Deno.land is the website where you can find out all more information about Deno. Remote file execution. So remote file execution, what this allows you to do is it allows you to run a a TypeScript or JavaScript application remotely. So let's say you have your application out there, or maybe you've just automated something because you saw it in a lightning talk, and you want to have your script out there and you want to run that on a machine, maybe a new machine you're setting up. Or something along those lines. You can actually hit that. So essentially you just run Deno run, and actually Deno will reach out, grab those files that it needs, downloads the dependencies, and run the app just straight. And it's really quite slick. This offers you some flexibility with where you can run your applications, and don't have to create some big images or containers or dealing with Docker. Specific example that got really excited about Deno specifically is the fact of running it into code pipelines or code build or something like that before you push off to AWS or other different types of services. Potentially you could say, hey, I'm gonna write my testing script within Deno and then have it accessible on the network, pull it in automatically, and I don't have to deal with Docker. I don't have to deal with images along that sorts. I can just grab it wherever I need it, that it's available on the network. So those are some examples. And then since Deno is so new, the version right now is 1.31. So Deno actually just released 1.0 in January. So this is very fresh. So if there's ever like a kind of a programming language or kind of a runtime that you're like, you know what, I kind of want to see what it's like to contribute to a public project, this is definitely something to jump in on and check out. And because it's so new, there's not a lot of dependencies out there already. So the author thought it was very important to kind of start giving you some free modules to kind of go along and help the process. So code formatting, very similar to Golang, having a testing and assertion library right baked in, so you don't need to go fishing around for one on the internet. And then stuff of getting a hold of the file system, just right baked in there. Of course, there's a bunch of other ones out there. I think there's about 30 of them, and you can kind of check it out at Deno Land. That talks about the standard modules that are baked in. So if you're familiar with Node.js or NPM and kind of that whole realm of programming, this might be a triggering moment for you. How could you possibly run a JavaScript or TypeScript file without a package.json or node modules? So how Deno structures their specific requirements is that they actually just have you source the file that you would like to import right in where you're going to be using them. So for instance, in the file that I'll be showing you, I have at the top of my page, I have import serve from server.ts with this URL. If you were to go to this URL, you would find a file with all the code that I'm importing. This kind of makes it easy just to know, saying, hey, where am I grabbing this file? And you can find the source right away. You do not need to mess around with package.jsons or lock files or stuff that can kind of create issues and just complexity. That's pretty slick. Big part of something that package.json had was versioning. Their way of solving this was handling it within the path of the file that you're importing. So for instance, here you're going to see this @0.66.0. So as you pull these files in, you're able to actually version lock like you would just in Node.js. A big difference that you might kind of see here is that you actually do include the file ending. Just makes it kind of overall easy about what file you're looking at and making sure expectations are met. The neat thing about this, and this is actually pretty cool, you do not have node modules directory based in your project. How this works is that Deno actually stores a temporary file in the root of your system, all the dependencies that you ever download, not just for one project, but for all of the projects. This is super helpful if you have, a handful of Node.js applications and you set up your new computer using your awesome scripts that you just made, and you need to pull over all of your old projects. So you're like, okay, I guess I have to go through, copy of them over. You could be easily looking at about like 2 gigabytes worth of files that you need to copy over because of all of the extensions and all the things you have duplicate copies of. So if you have a bunch of Angular or Express APIs in there, you're going to be downloading the same files and moving the same files around a lot. Deno dedupes that, so you only download one version of, for instance, standard library at version 0.66 for all of the projects that you work on your computer. So it definitely cuts down on the weight of your project environment and make sure that you can move projects around a lot easier and you're a little bit more flexible. Yeah, so here's an example of kind of what it looks like to install dependencies. Don't blink because you might miss it, but we have a terminal over here. This is the first time running it, and you'll see all the downloaded files right there. And I am just showing you an example of what the application is supposed to be doing. It's just supposed to be booting up Hello World. So we'll play that one more time in case you did miss it. Cool. Yeah. So that's how easy it is. Yeah. Let's just go to the next one. So this next video I'm going to show you is talking about permissions. So I wanted to show you an example of what it would look like if you did not give your application the correct permissions. So same as always, Deno run, but we're going to not include the allow. You can see right there, it's giving you a network access error saying, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Here are the flags that are required to run this application. And there you go. The server is booted up. So will this replace Node.js? The answer is no, not anytime soon. And that is because there is such a community and there are so many people out there that are making packages and really brilliant people out there doing really cool stuff with Node.js. You can kind of think about this as this has its own release team, community, and everything like that. Just because the initial creator is not, spending most of his time updating it doesn't mean it's going away. But it is important to kind of note that Deno just has different objectives than Node.js. It is a different revision of it, and maybe over time we'll have more and more kind of packages and support for it. Should I start using this right now? Sure, but not in production. I think it's very important. So like I said, this really kind of came out on the scene at the beginning of this year. If you actually go on YouTube right now and type in Deno, almost every single title about it says Deno will replace Node.js. That's clickbait. It's not. And it's you have to be careful about that. It was triggering for me for a little bit there. But I think this is something that you can really script around with because there's not a lot of stuff out there, dependencies yet, and it is growing every day. But it's one of those things where you can really kind of find niche markets for something like this with the added idea of security or with the added idea of kind of its portability with pulling it in remote execution. Or if you are working at a company and for some reason your security officer says, no, we will not use Node.js because of certain issues. People can rest a little bit easier at night. That is my talk. If there are any questions, I can take them now.